Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co.
I'm Professor Meg.
And today we are reviewing Mycelia from Ravensburger. Mycelia is a 1 to 4 player intro to deck building game.
Yes.
Yes.
Deck building with other actions, because there are some that are straight deck building, but this is also giving you a board and some movement things to work with, so...
It's giving you a bunch of stuff. You want to walk away with explanation? Should I?
Sure. So in Mycelia, you are going to have your personal player boards, and there are two sides, so right now I have it on the variable player sides, but you are, basically every player starts with these 20 dewdrops on their board, and you can see it's depicted here, so that gives you the general setup, and there are a couple to choose from, but you have your dewdrops all over, and then you're going to have your starting hand of 6 cards, your starting deck of 6 cards. From those 6 cards, you're going to draw 3, and you're always going to be playing all 3 of your cards. So this is classic deck building where you're going to be adding cards to your deck, and then using those to have better abilities, and always cycling through playing 3 cards every turn. So for example here, if we just walk through a turn, you're going to have these 3 available, which would show that I would gain 3 leaves, which is the currency in the game. My opponents would gain 1, meaning Alex would get 1 right now. And for this red symbol, I would be able to move a dewdrop that is on a red square once. So I would be able to move this one, for example, here. And what you're trying to do is move all of your dewdrops to this warp portal, because as soon as I move one into there, I'm able to remove it and place it onto this little tree dial. And for the different number player games, here you can see up to this white is 2 player, then 3 player, and 4 player. But as soon as you fill the dewdrops up to that specific point, we could.
You could just do it. We're gonna magically remove a few tiles over here.
Because it is very pretty to see, but this is kind of your tracker for how often this triggers. So that will happen, and then you're going to rotate the board around to empty them all out, to empty the tracker, and it will also roll this die for you, showing where you're going to spawn new dewdrops. So for every amount that you are removing, you are dropping new ones down, kind of adding to the puzzle, so that you're not just removing the ones that you start with, and then you would take this die, place it here again, and you would move forward with that. But yeah, a lot of the game is going to be using the cards that you are acquiring from the different rows. There are advanced cards that you can play with if you want an extra challenge, but you're going to be using these leaves that you gain for money to buy those cards. And something that is very interesting that I really appreciate is that the cards that you buy in this game go to the top of your deck. So usually in a deck building game, any cards that you purchase go to your discard pile, and you kind of have to wait an entire cycle to randomly draw them. Whereas these cards, they are pretty powerful and really good, and you get to put them on the top of your deck right away instead and play them immediately. I think that's really good for an intro to deck building, because it kind of shows you the card you played right away, and you can see the mechanics in play so you understand it right away, instead of forgetting what the card might have been.
Another thing they did for intro deck building I think was a nice change from what you usually see is the currency you earn in the game is earned for ongoing rounds. In most deck builders, the currency you have is for this round only. You don't have 5, you need 5 for that card. Tough nuggies. Like, you can't buy it. In this game, you build it up as you go, which means eventually you'll always be able to buy a card, which is a nice twist, both strategically, but also as an intro to deck building.
And you also have these starting abilities that you're able to use, so you are doing your 3 cards per turn, and you're gaining new cards throughout the game, but you also have these abilities, which for this one, you can pay 1 just to refresh the row of cards. So that's another way that you can even have, like, more affordable cards, or the things that you might need if they're removing from certain colors. But if I didn't say it already, the first player to remove all of their dewdrops just wins the game immediately.
Yeah, that's basically the game. Past that, like you said already, touched upon already, there's an advanced mode to the game where you add in more cards, and you can play with asymmetric sides, start adding more abilities, which you have to unlock. Certain cards will give you certain benefits. This card, when you buy this, you'll burn a card from your deck, so you have different abilities you'll get in these advanced cards. And then there's also a solo mode, which I believe you've played. I have not.
Oh my gosh, I wish I could remember the guy. He's a ghost mushroom that you play against. He's like wandering the forest.
Interesting.
But you basically play against him. He has these tiles that give him an action every turn. And he has a pile of dewdrops that he never gains more when you replenish. So you're constantly gaining more, but he's not. Even though the ones that he removes contributes to the tree.
Fun. Now, as far as the review, side of things, as far as what we like, don't like, and conceal as not liking, starting off what we like, what do you like about the game?
I accidentally already said it, but one thing I really enjoy about this game is that when you purchase from the available cards, you get to put it on top of your deck. I think that is something that does make it a lighter deck building game and an intro to deck building, but as someone who enjoys deck building, it's kind of spoiled, and I like getting the thing that I just spent, especially when you spend a lot of money, you get rewarded with being able to use it right away. So yeah, it does the classic deck building really cleanly. I think another thing that it did to streamline it is that you're only playing 3 cards instead of
Yes.
5, which you would usually do. So I think between all of that, it does make it very smooth, very approachable and learnable.
Also, separating out those cards from the advanced to the basic cards, again, makes it more approachable. But I'll agree with you as well, in terms of the cards that go on top of your deck, and as well as in terms of the currency that gets saved up. Both those things are things that make the game more accessible, but they're also nice twists if you're used to deck building. So it's not like, oh, this is accessible and dumbed down. It's accessible and just a different strategic approach, which is fun to play as an experienced gamer, but also making it more accessible to a gateway gamer.
Yeah.
For me, one of the things I really enjoyed about the game is the movement puzzle going on here, because at first it kind of, when you first dive into this game, it kind of feels like, okay, so I just have to get everything here, that's kind of it. But as you start adding cards, abilities get more and more complicated. You'll have things like here, burn a card from the deck, but you can also burn up to 3, at least 2, you have to have at least 2, but up to 3 dewdrops from a red area. You'll have cards that reward you for being able to burn cards from around certain areas. And so you end up having this weird puzzle of being trying to prioritize movement to be able to move things into the portal, but also trying to straight up burn things to get them straight off your board into, like right here, it's a perfect card. I love this card. You have to remove 4 things from around a single area. That can be incredibly rewarding, and then trying to puzzle around those things. The game's cards inherently will shift up the way you're trying to move things around the board and the way you're trying to build the deck. And so this puzzle is both accessible, but also very rewarding to play through over here as you try to find the right combination of cards that all complement each other to be able to move things off. So I really enjoyed the movement puzzle combined with the deck building.
Yeah, I completely agree that I really enjoyed interacting with the dewdrops, even though it kind of is just a metric for how many actions you've taken and how many pushes you've been able to do. But I really like the tactileness of like how they even feel and things like that. It's very pretty.
I also like the way that the game will have you slowly replenishing your dewdrops. One thing we didn't talk about is when the die rolls down here, you'll replenish based on this, and then you'll flip it, and you're going constantly back and forth. But that's going to add dewdrops to your board in different areas, which also is nice because sometimes in the game you look at a player's board and you're like, you got 2 left and I got 4 left, and that might seem threatening, but as things are being added to the board, and combined with if you have a better deck at that point, that game might be closer than you think. I really appreciate the game adding a little bit, so it's not a perfect system. You can't perfectly plan, because otherwise you can perfectly optimize. You'll be like, okay, I have to get this over here, I have to move that there, but then suddenly, before you know it, you're adding a dewdrop to this field, and some of the cards don't want drops. This card needs exactly 2 drops. So if you add a dewdrop to a field that already had 2, that can mess up your plans. You have to pivot around that knowledge, and so that introduces a degree of uncertainty that makes it so it's never perfectly like, oh, you're going to win in a turn. Okay, it is what it is. So I like that as well.
One other unique thing about the cards is that there are some that give positive benefits to the opponents, which is really interesting. That some can give money, or I think some can even let you remove your dewdrops or move them. So that's just another thing that I think is really good for an intro game, that, you know, even like the cards that may be a bit powerful, they give other people opportunities to try to benefit off of that as well.
As far as what we don't like in the game, I'll start off here with one that's a pet peeve more than anything else, which is, this is a beautiful production piece. This is beautiful. It's great. It's very cool. You spin the die. It rolls out. The dewdrops roll out. It feels underused. Every person I've played this game with, every person we play this game with that we've shown it to, feels like, is that all it does? Is it just spinning the die? What do you do with the dewdrops? Nothing. Some of them go back on your board. The rest go out of the field. And even the die, by the way, it's not the best dice tray. Like, sometimes the die just slides out and doesn't even roll. Sometimes it rolls. Sometimes not. And so it's a very well produced, beautiful table part that feels like, it feels like it's cool, but not necessarily integrated. It's a nitpick. It's not a real complaint.
Yeah, I had the same feeling as well, is that for me, especially as the person who had to figure out putting it together, it basically is just a tracker for the dewdrops filling up. It's for you to count from here to here, that as many times as that fills, you roll the die and that's what triggers. So that's really the only purpose of it, is to track up to that point. It looks beautiful when it happens, but it doesn't do anything.
Yeah. And then on a more meaningful level, the thing that I really didn't like about the game, and I genuinely, like, this is not like a small thing, the game feels too short. Which is fine for the intro to deck building aspect. When you consider who the target audience is, and not having too long an experience is a good thing. For me, every single time I've played this game, I feel like the game is ending just as I'm starting to ramp up my actual deck, and the pacing of it, I want it to be longer. I want it to even have just a longer version. And granted, you can just house rule whatever you want, throwing some extra things on. But I really feel that for a deck building game, there's a lot of cool cards, there's a lot of cool possible synergies, and the entire thing comes to a close before you can really start to build it up. I never once played this game and felt like I had the arc that I wanted. I do feel like it's a good arc for younger players, for that intro to deck building, for that shorter game aspect. I always wanted it to be longer.
I think as well something that's missing from the deck building aspect, which again makes it approachable more of a gateway deck building game, but there's not as much of banishing of your base cards,
Yep.
which I feel like is really essential in a lot of the competitive deck building games. So that was something I was kind of looking for, but I don't know if we're looking at it with a lens of well-seasoned deck building
Yeah.
players, so we're kind of, putting it up against something that it's not trying
And
to
there
do.
is some, to be clear, mostly in the advanced cards, but definitely less so than you might find in another deck builder. Yeah. As far as final thoughts, where are you on this one?
So for me, I want to love it. So sorry. I had one other thing that I'm sorry, but I had one other thing I didn't like about it. I did try the solo mode. I tried it a couple times. I have been trying to dive into the solo modes of quite a few of the games that we're reviewing now. And in the rules, it does have 20 dewdrops for the guy that you're playing against. I forget his name, but they give him a name. But he has 20 dewdrops, and they say that it is pretty difficult, and if you need an easier game to put like 25 or 30. And when I beat him, he still had 7 left over. So to me, to say that it can be really difficult, and for me to have that much left over, it just didn't feel that difficult at all, when I was almost kind of promised it would be too hard after playing a couple games where the solo mode was extremely difficult. So yeah.
And again, that's tricky because, like, on the one hand, intro deck building. On the other hand, you just don't need to say it's pretty difficult.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
As far as final thoughts?
For me, this is going to be a solid 3.
3? Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. So I give this one a 3.5 out of 5. I really actually like this game a lot in terms of the core concepts going on here. I think it's very fun. I like the movement mechanic. I like the way the cards are different than, like, it's not the whole combination of, like, burning tokens and moving tokens and then economy. I really felt, and, like, even just the localized aspect. You're not just burning a token, you have to burn a token from a certain color. That added a flavor that I haven't typically seen in deck building games that I really did enjoy. The main thing for me is that I feel I want a longer, meatier version of this game. I like Mycelia. Now I want, like, how we often have, like, games for kids, like, oh, we have this game and this game junior, or this game and this game's for my first Mycelia, whatever it is. I don't want my first Mycelia. I want my last Mycelia. On my deathbed playing Mycelia. Who's the target audience for this video? Because I'm starting to go off the rails here.
Right.
I like the core engine of Mycelia, and if this is targeted towards gateway or kid friendly and all that, I want the version of this that escalates it to the next level while built on this core. But I did really appreciate the core of it, so it's a 3.5 out of 5. Obviously, if you are getting this as somebody who is getting this for gateway gamers, for kids, family, all that, factor in that I do think it is a very good game for that target audience. My own personal enjoyment was in that 3.5 range.
Yeah, for me, I felt it had a lot of mechanics that work really well. I do think it's a great intro for people that are looking to get into this type of game. But for me, I almost hope that when you do use this as an intro, that you then use that to move on to games that are a bit more crunchy and deliver a bit more for you. Yeah.
Makes sense. Speaking of intros, my recommendation for this is going to be another intro to deck building game. Star Realms Academy from Wise Wizard Games is another new game that just came out recently that is going to take the Star Realms game and then make it a little more distilled, a little more intro. I think it also has 3 cards instead of 5. I'm pretty sure. Like, I have to remember, but like I think it has the same 3 versus 5 cards. Really trying to give you the deck building experience just a little bit more streamlined for younger players.
Yeah, and my recommendation is going to be Clank. I think Clank is a really great deck building game. That it's one that takes deck building and a bit of a board that you're moving on a shared board instead. You're dungeon diving down to get different trophies and then make it out. But it does introduce a lot of deck building, and I think it does it in a very slow way because there are a lot of actions you need in the beginning where you can't go too crazy with the complex cards. I think, and it's almost the opposite where in this you're trying to get rid of the dewdrops, and in that one you're trying to keep all your Clank because you don't want to make noise.
Kind of like my last Mycelia, if you think about it.
Yeah, kind of.
In any case, until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co.
I'm Professor Meg.
And I hope you have a good one.
Bye.